Hi guys, and welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about one of my favorite genres of everything, found footage. Also, sorry if you hear any noise. They are currently putting siding on my house outside, so you might hear some banging. So found footage in general is this idea where you're creating movies or podcasts or whatever that the people inside of them don't know that they're making something. So it's one thing when you're writing fiction and you know you're filming a movie or recording a podcast because you have full control over the world. You are the only one in charge of what it can do and what it is. But with found footage, things get a little bit more tricky because you're pretending that what you're creating is in the same world that the reader inhabits. So not only does your story have to operate within the functional bounds of reality, you also have to deal with the fact that theoretically whoever's behind the camera doesn't know that they're making a movie. They can't be seen to capture things only for the sake of storytelling, because technically they don't know they're telling a story. I want to go back to the first piece of found footage media that I ever absorbed, Cloverfield. I can honestly say I have seen Cloverfield 8 times in theaters when it was out, so I'm a little bit of an expert. Cloverfield is one of those rare films that gets this both very right and very wrong. So if you don't know it, Cloverfield is a found footage style monster movie. The film itself has a cold open. You just kind of get a black screen with a designation of a case number from the Department of Defense. We then cut to Bren's at a going away party for one of their friends, and they are passing a camera around filming goodbye messages when a giant tentacled monster attacks New York City. So what works really well about this movie is that it, from the outset, provides an explanation for why it exists. The idea that these friends are filming going away messages at a going away party for their friend is a very realistic explanation of why this is being filmed, and that is one of the biggest problems of document style media that I find, which is, especially with movies, you always have to question at every turn, why are you still filming this? And while Cloverfield does a great job of answering this question in the beginning of the film, this slowly starts to deteriorate the more ridiculous things start to get outside. I don't know about you, but if I'm running from a giant monster, I've either dropped the camera or it's pointing at the ground the entire time. Now, there are a few good explanations throughout the film for this, such as, oh, you know, we're in a dark place, let me use the night vision to see, and then suddenly you're catching something on camera. But for the most part, these explanations for why we're filming really start to dissolve. When you just so happen to be catching all the important plot points on camera, the idea that you've just found a camcorder in the middle of a park and you're playing the footage starts to lose legitimacy. But just because we're talking about movies doesn't mean this technique is anything new. If you're a fan of reading the classics, you'll probably recognize the found footage trope from a slightly older medium, and I want to pull out here one of the, I was gonna say the earliest examples, but I actually have no idea. One of the best examples that I've ever read of an epistolary novel. The epistolary novel is essentially the original found footage. And what it is in definition is a book that presents itself as a collection of letters pulled together and bound into a volume that supposedly tell a story. Now, the writers of these letters, theoretically, didn't know that their letters were ever to be included in a book, or that they were even recording anything important at the time. They were just writing letters to their friends or to their family. So Bram Stoker's Dracula is presented as a collection of letters and newspaper articles and ship's logs detailing the journey of Count Dracula from his castle in Transylvania into England, and the terror and destruction he reaps there. The novel itself has no narrator. There's nothing overarching that ties all these documents together. They are simply presented as though they had been collected by someone after the fact and published for posterity. So epistolary format can be very powerful because it implies to the reader that what they're reading, no matter how fanciful it might seem, isn't separated from their world by a veil of fiction. It's happening in the world that they currently inhabit. In the same way that it's very different to watch a movie about a natural disaster as opposed to seeing the footage of one on the news. I mean, think about, for instance, War of the Worlds, the initial radio broadcast that wasn't caveated as fiction, that was just kind of broadcast as though aliens were suddenly invading Earth. And I mean, that one had some pretty dark consequences, and if you don't know what I mean, go look it up. This format is also really difficult to master, however, because now everything that's included in the narrative needs a justification for being there. An event can only be described in a diary entry if the person involved had the opportunity afterwards to sit and write it down. Something can only be included in a newspaper article if there was a reporter on site and they happened to be there to see it and their editor agreed to publish it. Often, a writer has an idea for a story in mind, and then they create narrative events to get the story there. But when you're working with found footage, when you're working with epistolary format, suddenly your options for getting things from point A to point B are a lot more limited. But if you can pull this off, it brings an emotional immediacy to your story that is honestly unparalleled. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Left to Right. Please feel free to like, comment, subscribe down below, and let me know if you're a fan of epistolary format, if you like found footage, if you have any found footage favorites. I'm always looking for new found footage to watch.